This video is going to be a complete walkthrough of the automation software Make, formerly known as Integromat, and how you can use it to automate anywhere from 80 to 90% of your business's day-to-day activities. Before I dive into my screen here and show you exactly how to use Make and then some example Make automations that we use in our 8-figure company, there's two things you need to understand. The first is the importance of automation in your business. Most people are afraid of learning a software like Make or its sister Zapier because they think it's too techy. But what many people don't understand is that you can automate the majority of the tasks that likely you or your team is currently doing manually. And when you can automate something instead of doing it manually, that frees up your time or your team's time, so you're making more dollar per hour. The tasks happen a lot faster because it's happening through automation every 1 to 15 minutes. And the third and final, and probably the most important thing, is that there's much less mistakes, many less mistakes when you have an automation doing this, because human beings are prone to error where automation is not. Over the past 100 years or so, the number of employees needed to generate $1 million in a business has slowly been decreasing. And this is a good thing. This means that you can make $1 million faster with less employees and more profit than you could before. But in order to do that, you have to just spend a little bit of time upfront learning how to use automation. But the great thing is, with using softwares like Integromat or Zapier, it's very drag and drop, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it in this video. And the second thing you should be aware of is that I'm going to make a lot of puns in this video because I can't make this up. All right, let's get into it. So as usual, let's first start on the pricing page. Which pricing plan is going to be best for you? Well, if you can see here, of course, they have a free option, which is amazing. And this is going to be a great place for a lot of people to start. Okay, so if you're just testing this out, you're putting your toe in the waters, you want to see if this thing is something that you should invest in or not, then I recommend just getting the free version. The benefit of the free version is that it's free. The drawback of the free version is that you only get 2 active scenarios. Okay, so 2 active scenarios means 2 different automations you can set up and run. And to give you an idea, between Zapier and Make, we have, I don't know, anywhere between 400 and 500 different scenarios. So although the free is good to get started, it's going to become very limiting very quickly. The second reason why I don't love the free version is because of the amount of time between scheduled scenarios. So I'm going to walk through the difference of a scenario and a module and an operation in a moment here. But if you have 15 minutes between each scheduled scenario and you need something to be firing every minute or so, then it's going to really delay the ability for the automation to be very, very powerful. So for that reason there, I think it's good to start on the free process, but you're going to want to quickly move over to the core or the pro version, which is only $9 a month or $16 a month respectively. And the final thing that you should be aware of with the free version is it gives you 1,000 operations a month. I don't think this is that limiting because a lot of people don't have that many operations running. Now, once again, to give you an example, between both Make and Zapier, we have over, I think, 700,000 different operations that happen a month. But in this example, and for most people here, they're going to need just like anywhere from a few hundred to maybe 1,000. So what do these words mean? What is operation? What is scenario? What is a module? So this is kind of our little hierarchy chart that I created for you inside of here. So in the beginning, when you're setting up your account, you're going to set up what's known as an organization. So the organization is going to be just that. It's going to be the name of you or your company, and that's what houses all of your different scenarios. And your scenarios are essentially the different automations that you're setting up. What are the different activities that are being automated for you and your company? So a scenario could be whenever somebody books an appointment, you send them an email. Another scenario could be whenever someone requests a refund, you give them a refund inside of your merchant processor. So those are 2 different scenarios, right? And so each individual scenario inside of Make is limited based on your plans here. So like I said a moment ago, you can only have 2 active scenarios in the free plan. So if you get the free plan, then those are the only 2, like I gave you a moment ago, that you'd be able to have turned on at any given time. And then inside of the scenarios, you have what are known as modules. And these are kind of the different apps that you're connecting together. So going back to the example I gave you a moment ago with the booked appointment and you send them an email, well, the booked appointment, that is a module, and sending them an email, that is a module as well. So those are kind of like 2 different apps. And so those are the different modules inside of Make. And then the connection between these different modules, imagine this is like the two automations talking together. Those are what is known as operations. So every single time someone books an appointment and I send them an email, that's one operation. If, for example, whenever someone booked an appointment, I send a message to our team on a Slack channel and I sent an email, that would actually be two operations in one scenario. So you can kind of see that if you have some scenarios like we do, where there's, 5 to 10 different modules, then there's going to be 10 to 20 different operations that happen in each of those. And that's how it can really quickly add up to 100, 200, 300, 500, 1,000, 10,000, 20,000, or eventually where we're at, 600 to 700,000 operations a month. But I'm sure that no matter which plan you choose, you're going to make it work. Okay, so let's say you signed up for a specific plan. This is what your Make dashboard looks like. There's only a few things here you need to look at, so don't let it be overwhelming to you. The first and foremost is the operations and the data transfer. So operations, like I said before, is those different apps talking to each other. Every single one of those is an operation, and you want to keep an eye on that because in this plan we have right now, we have 40,000 operations a month. So if I gotten close to that 30, 35, 39,000, I maybe would look to increase my plan, because if I go at 40,000, it'll stop all of my automation. And the second thing is data transfer. This is not going to be useful or relevant to many of you, but data transfer would be like in my operations, if I'm sending, let's say, images from one module to another module in that operation, then that data transfer would be limited, and there's different plans have different limits on their data transfer. So like I said a moment ago, you're not going to have to worry too much about data transfer because most people don't have it. But if you know that you are sending a lot of media, you're probably going to have to end up getting one of the higher plans. Now, on the left-hand side here, you have a few different things that are important. The first is scenarios. So like I talked about before, a scenario is like kind of that automation process. These are the active scenarios we have in this account here. And you can see this little button in the top right to create a new scenario here. So you have scenarios, then you have connections, and you have webhooks. And that's pretty much the only things you need to worry about. Connections and webhooks are relatively the same thing for the, untech induced person. Essentially, it is how do you have Make talk with the different softwares and apps that you have elsewhere. So for me to use our calendar software, Calendly, with Make, I would need to set up the connection inside of Make. So you can look at your connections, or you can look at your webhooks, which is another way to do a connection inside Make, on these two buttons right here. But let's dive in and let's create our first scenario. So I'm going to go ahead and click create a new scenario right here. Did you catch that one? Make a new scenario. In order to create our first scenario, we have to set up our first module. So I'm going to click this little plus button right here. And as you can see, this has literally thousands of different applications that I could use as a module inside of Integromat. So a few examples that everybody knows would be like ClickUp or ClickFunnels or Calendly or Gmail. All of these will be inside of here, and I'll do a separate video on the difference between Make and Zapier. But one of the things I have found is that even just the number of apps available in Make is far better than the sister software Zapier. So let's create an example module here. Well, I'll just do Calendly, and what I want to do is once I select which app I want to be working with, so it's going to let me know out of all the apps that I have, this is the one that I want to trigger this step. And then you have what exactly are you looking for in this app here. So I could watch for events, I could list events, list event attendees, list event types, get an event, create a scheduling link. But in this example here, I want to watch for events because I want this to be the trigger step. So anytime an event is created or canceled, I want this automation to trigger. So I'm gonna go ahead and click watch events here. It's going to ask me to choose a hook, so I'm just going to choose a hook. I already have a hook there. If you don't, it's going to prompt you. You can click add and add the webhook for your specific software. I'm going to click OK. And now I have the trigger events for this automation, essentially. Now, one cool thing that most people don't know is this little lightning bolt down here. So what does this mean? This is not Hercules or Zeus. What this means is that this is an instance scenario. So this scenario triggers automatically anytime they find an event inside of Calendly. Now, if for whatever reason I didn't want this scenario to trigger all the time and I only wanted it to trigger, let's say on Tuesdays or over the weekend or at specific times during the day, I could actually click on this and I could change this schedule setting to at regular intervals. Maybe I just want to run it once. Maybe I want to run it every day, days of the week, days of the month, specified dates, on demand. So I could say I wanted to run on, Tuesday and Wednesday at 1846. I'd click OK. And then at 1846, it would trigger this event to watch for all of the events in my Calendly, okay? So in this example, it doesn't really make sense to have it, but a few examples of when it may make sense to have it would be, for example, if somebody sends you an email outside of your regular office hours, and you could have this only fire whenever there's an email outside of your regular office hours, and then you could send them back a message in Integromat using a different module. So that's a pretty cool differentiator between Zapier and Integromat and Make, is that you can use the difference and choose from the very beginning when you want this to fire. Now, next step here is going to be to add another module. So I'm going to search for a specific application. In this example here, I'm going to type in Slack because we use a lot of integrations and automations with Slack. And I want to create a message. I'm going to type in create a message. Now, before I select on that, you can see there's literally dozens of different things. You can add stars, remove a star, add reactions, remove actions. You can literally remove channels. You can join channels. You can pin stuff. I mean, the possibilities here are absolutely unlimited, which is one of the coolest things I like about Make. But let's say we're going to keep it super simple as a beginner video. We're going to create a message here, okay? And you're going to have to connect your Slack connection. Now, as a quick reminder, this one's asking for a connection because there's a direct integration between Make and Slack. But in Calendly, there's not exactly a direct integration, so you have to use what's known as a webhook. So a webhook is the kind of more technical version of an integration, a connection, whenever they don't have the direct integration. But the connection side is when they have a direct integration and it's much easier to use. So on Calendly, I had to do a webhook, but on Slack, I do a connection. And then I would enter the channel that I would want to create this message on. So I'm going to select from the list, and I'm just going to type in, we have a booked appointment channel. So let me just type in booked appointment. And then under the text box here, this is what we want to send in that Slack message. So I would say something like, we have a new booked appointment, exclamation mark. And then I can pass the data from the Calendly event that triggered this entire thing into Slack. So that's the cool thing. It's like having these two things talk to each other. So I would say the things that I would want is, for example, what is the name of the event? So what type of event did they book on? What is the name of the person that booked the event? What is their email address? When was this event created? And then the other thing you can do is add specific questions and answers on here. So for example, if you're asking them, are you going to ghost this appointment? Are you going to show up? Or how much revenue you're making? Or any kind of the qualifying questions that you want to see, you can put that all inside of Slack so that I can send it over and update your team when you get a booked appointment. The other thing you should be aware of is, as you can see, as I'm putting my mouse over these kind of dynamic variables that I'm pulling from Calendly, you can see that Calendly module is pulsating right there. Do you see that? So that kind of lets you know, as you get to really more in-depth and more complicated scenarios, that where exactly are you pulling this original data from? Because you could eventually have like 10, 15, 20 modules, and it might get a little bit confusing as far as where you're pulling the data from. So as long as you move your mouse and it's pulsating, that lets you know that it's coming from that specific module. So this is good for now. I'm just going to say we have a new booked appointment, the name of the events, the name of the person, the email, what data was created, and any kind of additional questions and answers. And I'm just going to click OK. And just like that, I literally have my first scenario set up. But the problem is that if you're like me, I have a bunch of different events inside of Calendly. So if every single time I get an event, it sends it to the booked appointment channel, it's also going to send when I have one-on-one calls, when we do onboarding calls, when we do feedback calls, any one of these is going to trigger this event here. So what we want to do is we want to come in here and click this little filter with this little kind of dots right here, and we can create conditions. So I want to make sure that the event name, which is this one right here, contains the words roadmap. So in our company, if someone was going to book a sales call, it's called a roadmap call. So anytime it's a sales call, we know it's going to have the roadmap. So in this exact scenario, I want to only be sending those booked appointment messages for sales calls. And I'm just going to label this filter. And this is important because as you get advanced, you're going to have a lot of different filters inside of here. And I'm just going to call it roadmap call, so I can see that. And then we'll click on OK. And you can see very easily, I can see that whenever Calendly triggers an event and it's a roadmap call, which is the filter, then I want you to create a message in Slack. A few additional things you can see on the filter side here. You can add and or or rules. So an and rule would be like, I want it to make sure it contains the word roadmap, and I want to make sure that, you know, let's say the email address does not contain Yahoo, for example. I don't ever want to know about somebody that's booked from Yahoo, just as an example here. Sorry if you have a Yahoo account. So this filter would say, if they have, if the event contains the word roadmap, so there are sales call events, and the email that the person booked with is not a Yahoo email, then you can just move on and trigger the rest of these modules here, okay? So that's an example of the different things that you can use. And not to get too advanced, but there's also different filters you can use up here. So you can do math equations, you can do dates, you can do a bunch of different stuff. It's out of the scope of this video, but once again, another reason why I think this reigns supreme is because it gives you a lot of options to choose from, and you can get really, really complex with this stuff if you nerd out like I do, okay? So if there's a Calendly event, it triggers automatically, and it has the word roadmap inside of it, then I want you to create a Slack message. But there's one more thing I want to show you when you're setting up a basic scenario inside of Make. Okay, so let's say, for example, that I want to use the same scenario here, but I want to set up different modules for and different operations for if I had different types of calls. So in this current one, this is only if it's a sales call, if it's a roadmap call. But what if instead I wanted to make it so that this scenario happens as long as it's a roadmap call, but if it's an onboarding call, I want to send a message inside of our onboarding call section. Well, what I can do here is I can right click this and click add a router, okay? So instead of having this be the router, the filter preventing us, I'm gonna add a router here that if it's a roadmap call, like I said a second ago, so the event name, and you can see the Calendly is pulsating there, contains roadmap, then I want you to go through this automation right here. And I'm just gonna go ahead and remove this filter. Okay, so now in the top corner here, you can see if it's a roadmap call, then I want you to do the same thing you're doing previously. But what if I want to set up the onboarding one? Well, I can come down here, I can add a different router, and I can say onboarding instead, onboarding, right? And you have one kind of cool option here, which means that if it doesn't match in the roadmap one, then send all other ones to this path here. So this works if you have two different ones, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in this example. But if, for example, you were like, hey, if this comes back positive, then send it this message. But if it's not positive or it's anything else, send it down to this one instead, okay? So I'm not gonna use that, but that as an example. And for the condition, I wanna say if the event's name contains the word onboarding, we'll click okay, then use a Slack message, create a message, same thing, select from list. This time we're gonna do onboarding. So let's find our onboarding channel. And the text is, hey, we have a new client. And then once again, I could put in all the information here. So name, email, phone number, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'd come down here and I would click on okay. Perfect. So now I have a router that says if it's a sales call, send them a message up here. If it's an onboarding call, send them a message down here. And the final few things I want to show you is like just the other aspects of the dashboard here. So these are the different softwares that you're using on the bottom right-hand side. You can see that you have tools and flow control here. On this basic version, I'm not going to walk you through all these things, but you have breaks, you can have iterator, you can have a repeater. The most of the time you're going to use a router, so don't worry about that. Then you have the auto align, which is the one that I love to use. So if I'm like going here crazy and I've got this over here, I got this over here, I got this over here, I can just click this little auto align button and it makes it nice and organized. Another really nice thing is notes. I can right click on these modules and add a note. And then, for example, we have our entire company, or not our entire company, but quite a bit of a number of team members inside of this Make account. So I could say something like, I had to only use, let's just say, answers instead of pulling the direct phone number because of integration. So that could just let somebody know the next time they're inside of here, that's why I use the answers dynamic field versus trying to find the phone number, because there is no phone number field inside of Calendly. So that makes it easier so you can kind of communicate with your team when you're setting stuff up. And then you can obviously save the scenario right here. And then the schedule setting is like I talked about previously. If I wanted to change it so that it didn't run immediately and instead it ran on regular intervals or different, like at different timing, I can do it there. And then the very last thing you're gonna wanna do is turn it on right here. So let me click turn on, and now this scenario is live. We've created a scenario together. So now anytime we get a calendar event and it has a roadmap, it's going to go to the booked call Slack message and let us know we have a roadmap. And if it has an onboarding, it's going to go to the onboarding channel and let us know that we have an onboarding call.